Welcome to our second video in this Translation in Education series brought to you by the National Association of Educational Translators and Interpreters of Spoken Languages, or NAETISL. We are hoping to continue giving you some more practical tools to support your work as translators, including glossaries and essential steps to ensure that accuracy and language variations are taken into account. I am sure that many of you can relate to seeing something like this on your desks or in your inboxes during your day, right? You have a request to translate a document as soon as possible and by yesterday. You may get requests for even more complex and lengthy documents, such as this disciplinary code that you see here, and be expected to complete this project along with all the other duties you have in your school. Some of you work in the main office, which is the central station of a school, and still be expected to produce accurate translations to be distributed to parents to ensure that parents stay informed. So what are the first steps? So there are some questions that we suggest that you ask before you begin. How much time do you have to do the translation? And how much time do you have to return it to the person that requested it? Is that enough? Can you handle the task right now? Are you able to focus and be away from distractions long enough to work on this document? Is the format pretty straightforward, or are there images or graphs that we'll need to keep in mind as part of the formatting process? So what is the translation about? Are you familiar with the context? Have you interpreted about this subject before, so you have a little bit of a background knowledge? What resources do you have to get this done? Do you have the glossaries that you need, or perhaps previous translated documents about the same subjects that you can use for comparison? At some point, you may have to self-advocate and help others understand the work of translators. So oftentimes people who are not familiar with the work of a translator feel that it's just a matter of taking a document, clicking a button, and transferring it to another language. Well, we know that it takes much more than that. However, other folks in our settings may not know that. So it is important that you find support to get the guidelines and to really set the guidelines so that you can have at least 1 week's notice to complete a translation. Now, if you have a document that is more than 2 or 3 pages with complex vocabulary and you wear other hats in your school, you may need to ask for more time. Why? Well, to produce high quality translations, you need time to research, to proofread, to format, to revise. So the quality of a translation will likely suffer when we are rushed, and we all want the same thing. We want to provide accurate information to our school population. So now let's talk about the first step. First step is to read and understand the document. So what we mean by this is to read the English document carefully to make sure that all of your questions about the text are answered, that it is grammatically correct, and that grammar mistakes will definitely make this translation process more difficult and possibly yield to inaccuracies. So make sure you have asked the owner of the document if what you have is the latest and final English version. I cannot tell you how many times I have started a translation only to be contacted by the owner to let me know that the document has been edited and I have to start over. What is the subject matter? Is it technical? Is this a psychoeducational report with lots of statistical terminology that you have not seen before? Or perhaps it's a disciplinary hearing letter with a lot of legal terminology. So note key concepts and terminology that you will need to research and decide which websites or resources you may need to access to get what you need. So oftentimes, if I get a document with unfamiliar language, I search the vocabulary first, create my glossary, which we will talk about later, and find equivalent translations, if any, to support my work. And this takes time. Next, we can start systematically translated the document and dividing it into sections or chunks or units of meaning. So these sections should not be single words, but units of meaning. So they should also not be so lengthy that you are literally lost in translation. If you work with sections that are too short, your translation will be unnatural and meaning will be compromised. So it is very important to create your own personal glossary. And you can do this by using tools such as Excel or Google Drive, or use a simple Word document. So this chart that you see here, I had to create before I even started a translation. And you would think by the content that this was a medical translation, but it is actually a special education document. And this emphasized the point that educational interpreters and translators have an amazing combination of skills from medical, social services, and legal terminology, which often come into play when producing translations. So in this glossary, you will notice that I found some meanings of the terms in English, but I also added some of the websites where I found those translated versions, because I'm likely to see this document again, and I'm likely to find the same terminology again. So I want to remember where it is that I got it from. You will also see that I highlighted prefixes of complex words, and that just helps me identify the same word family in the future. So thanks to my glossary, for example, I see that oligo will be related to low or few. I'm likely to translate the special education document for this same child again. So remember that in special education, individualized education plans or the reports that parents receive after a meeting have to be updated every year. So sometimes because I work on my glossary this first time, it'll save me time when I see the same document again. So it is just as efficient to use programs such as Google, such as Excel, if you're sharing especially the glossary with other members of your team. And this makes this process a whole lot more efficient. So there are some machine translation software that you can buy to create a bank of terms. However, I have found that just using Excel and Google Drive works just fine for me. So to conclude this video, I want to remind you to explore the clearinghouse of resources on the NAETISL website. You'll find several glossaries of discipline, legal, special education, terminology. You'll find templates of translated documents, and also links to different school district websites that have multicultural and multilingual materials so that you can use those as reference. So in our next video, we will talk about the next steps after we have reviewed the English version of the document, and we will start the translation process and also work on some of the vocabulary terms that we will need to review. Thank you for watching.